Imagine you're driving home late at night. The roads are empty. You check your mirrors, you signal every turn, you're doing everything right. Then you see the flashing lights in your rear view. Your heart rate jumps. You pull over, roll down the window, and the officer walks up. He smiles. He says, "Do you know why I pulled you over tonight?" It sounds simple. It sounds polite. But that question is a trap, and almost nobody sees it coming. Here's a question for you to think about while you watch this. Have you ever answered a police question and immediately regretted it? Pause for a second. Really think. Because by the end of this video, you're going to realize that the most innocent questions police ask are hiding something much, much deeper. And once you see it, you'll never hear, "Can I ask you a quick question?" the same way again. Stay with me, because what you're about to learn has been tested in courtrooms, used in thousands of arrests, and silently agreed to by millions of people who had no idea what they were actually giving up. Let's start with something that sounds like a conspiracy theory, but is actually just the law. When a police officer asks you a question, they are not required to tell you that you have the right to remain silent unless you are under arrest. That's right. The famous Miranda warning? You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. That only has to be read to you if you are in custody, not if you're just standing on the sidewalk, not if you're sitting in your car during a traffic stop, not if you voluntarily walk into a police station. So here's the hidden meaning behind most police questions. They are trying to get you to talk before you realize you don't have to. This changes everything, doesn't it? Let me give you a real example. In 2022, a man named Wayne in Florida was pulled over for a broken taillight. The officer asked, "Do you have anything illegal in the car?" Wayne said no. Then the officer asked if he could search the vehicle. Wayne said sure, because he had nothing to hide. The officer found a small bag of marijuana under the passenger seat. Wayne was charged with possession. In court, his lawyer tried to argue that the search was illegal. But the judge pointed out that Wayne voluntarily consented. He said yes. And because he said yes, the evidence stayed. Here's what most people don't understand. When you answer a police officer's questions, you are not just having a conversation. You are making legal decisions. Every answer can be used as evidence. Every yes can be interpreted as consent. Every no can be used to build a timeline. And every single word you say is being documented in that officer's memory or on their body camera for later use in court. But the real shocker? Police are legally allowed to lie to you. Let that sink in. In almost every state in America, under federal law, and in the UK under the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, officers can deceive you during an investigation. They can say, "Your friend already told us everything." They can say, "We have video of you at the scene." They can say, "If you just explain what happened, we can help you out." None of that has to be true. But you don't know that in the moment, and that's exactly the point. So when an officer asks, "Do you mind if I ask you a few questions?" what they are really saying is, "Will you voluntarily give up your constitutional rights?" And here's where it gets strange. Most people say yes. Studies show that over 90% of people voluntarily answer police questions, even when they know they have the right to remain silent. Why? Because we are hardwired to be polite. Because authority figures make us nervous. Because we believe that if we haven't done anything wrong, we have nothing to hide. But that logic is exactly what the system is built on. Think about the most common question in any police interaction. "Where are you coming from tonight?" Sounds like casual small talk, right? Two friends chatting on a street corner? But in reality, that question is a gold mine for an officer. If you say you're coming from a bar, they now have reasonable suspicion to check your blood alcohol level. If you say you're coming from a friend's house in a high-crime neighborhood, that's context they can use later. If you say you're coming from nowhere, that looks suspicious too. There is no right answer. The only winning move is not to answer. But you can't just sit there in silence, right? Actually, you can. In 2013, the Supreme Court ruled in Salinas v. Texas that if you're not in custody and you're voluntarily answering questions, your silence can be used against you. But if you clearly state that you're exercising your right to remain silent, that protection kicks in. The difference is one sentence. "I'm not going to answer any questions." That's it. That's the magic phrase that changes everything. Yet almost nobody says it. because we've been trained to believe that only guilty people stay silent. And that misconception has put more people in handcuffs than almost anything else. Let me take you deeper. There's a psychological technique police use called the read technique. It's taught in academies across the US and the UK. And one of its core principles is that guilty people behave differently than innocent people. But here's the problem. Decades of research have shown that innocent people under stress behave exactly the same as guilty people under stress. They fidget, they avoid eye contact, they stumble over words, they change their story slightly when asked the same question twice. None of that means they're lying. It means they're scared. And police know this. They are counting on it. So when an officer asks you the same question 3 different ways, they aren't trying to catch you in a lie because you're guilty. They are trying to create inconsistency because inconsistency gets them probable cause. And probable cause gets them a search. And a search gets them evidence. And evidence gets them a conviction. This is the hidden machinery behind every routine traffic stop, every knock on the door, every just a few questions. But there's one question that stands above all others as the most dangerous. And you've probably answered it before without thinking twice. That question is, do you mind if I take a look inside? Whether it's your car, your bag, your phone, or your home, that question is the point of no return. The moment you say yes, you have waived your Fourth Amendment protection against unreasonable search and seizure. And here's the shocking part. Police don't need a warrant if you consent. They don't need probable cause. They don't need reasonable suspicion. They just need you to say one word. Yes. And they are experts at getting you to say it. They'll make you feel like saying no means you have something to hide. They'll frame it as a favor. If you don't mind letting me take a quick look, we can get you out of here faster. They'll make it sound like cooperation is the path to freedom. But in reality, cooperation is the path to evidence. Almost nobody talks about this part. In the UK, under the Police and Criminal Evidence Act 1984, officers have certain stop and search powers without consent. But in many situations, they still ask. Why? Because a consensual search leaves no room for appeal. You can't challenge it in court if you agreed to it. And juries love consent. They see it as proof that you weren't being coerced, even when anyone who's ever been pulled over knows exactly how much pressure is in the air. So here's where we are. Every question a police officer asks has a hidden purpose. To gather evidence, to create consent, to test your story, to see if you'll change your answers, to see if you'll get nervous, to build a timeline, to establish jurisdiction, to confirm identity, to check for warrants, to establish reasonable suspicion, to create probable cause, to lock you into a statement that can be compared with later evidence. And the most dangerous questions are the ones that sound the most harmless. Nice car, is it yours? They're checking if you have a connection to a vehicle that might be reported stolen. How long have you been out tonight? They're building a timeline that could contradict witness statements. Do you know why I pulled you over? They're checking if you'll admit to a violation before they even accuse you of one. Have you had anything to drink tonight? Every answer other than no gives them reasonable suspicion for a field sobriety test. Where do you work? They're evaluating your stability, your schedule, and your potential motives. Do you live around here? They're determining if you belong in the neighborhood or if you're out of place. And then there's the question that changed everything in a landmark UK case from 2017. A man named Carl was stopped by British Transport Police. An officer asked, "Would you mind telling me where you're headed today?" Carl said he was going to visit his girlfriend. The officer asked for her address. Carl hesitated. That hesitation was noted. The officer then asked to search his bag. Carl said yes. Inside was a knife. Carl was arrested. In court, his lawyer argued that the initial stop was unlawful. But the judge ruled that because Carl voluntarily answered the first question, the officer had reasonable grounds to continue the encounter. One innocent answer opened every door. Do you see the pattern now? Every answer gives the officer more information. More information gives them more legal justification. More justification gives them more power. And more power means you have less freedom. But here's the truth that law enforcement doesn't want you to know. You are not required to help them build a case against you. In the United States, the Fifth Amendment protects you from being compelled to be a witness against yourself. In the United Kingdom, the right to silence has been protected by common law for centuries. though it now comes with potential adverse inferences under the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act 1994. The details differ, but the core principle is the same. You do not have to answer questions that could incriminate you. And the smartest thing you can say is almost nothing at all. Let me give you a script, because you're going to forget this under pressure and you need something simple to remember. When an officer asks a question, you say, "Officer, I respect you and I want to cooperate, but I've been advised not to answer questions without a lawyer present." That's it. That's all you say. You're not being rude. You're not being aggressive. You're not admitting anything. You're simply exercising a right that millions of people before you have died to protect. And here's the surprising part. Most officers will respect this, not because they're happy about it, but because they know you know your rights. And citizens who know their rights are much harder to manipulate, so they'll move on. They'll finish the traffic stop. They'll write the ticket. They'll let you go. Because their goal was never to have a friendly conversation. Their goal was to gather evidence. And once it's clear you're not providing any, the interaction loses its value. But what if you've already answered questions? What if you've already said something you regret? Here's the good news. You can stop at any time. You can say, "I've changed my mind. I'm not answering any more questions without a lawyer." The moment you say that, everything changes. The officer may keep talking. They may try to pressure you. But legally, once you invoke your rights, they are supposed to stop questioning you. If they don't, anything you say after that point can be challenged in court. There's a famous case from 2020 in New Hampshire. A woman named Sarah was pulled over for speeding. She answered questions for 10 minutes. Then she said, "I think I should talk to a lawyer." The officer kept asking questions. She kept answering. She was arrested for DUI. Her lawyer filed a motion to suppress everything she said after invoking her rights. The judge granted it. The case was dismissed. One sentence changed everything, but only because she said it at the right time. So here's your takeaway. The hidden meaning behind every police question is actually very simple. They are not asking because they care about your answer. They are asking because they want to see if you'll answer. Your willingness to talk is more valuable than anything you actually say. Because once you start talking, you have signaled that you are not going to assert your rights. And that signal is the green light for every question that follows. Think about it. How many times have you said yes just to move things along? How many times have you given a quick answer to seem cooperative? How many times have you filled a silence with words because silence felt uncomfortable? Every single one of those moments was an opportunity for an officer to build a case you didn't even know was being built. And that's the shocking truth. Not that police are bad, not that the system is broken, but that most people give away their rights without ever knowing they had them. The officer isn't being friendly, he's building a case. The officer isn't making small talk, he's gathering evidence. The officer isn't trying to help you, he's trying to help his prosecution. But here's the good news. Now you know, and knowing changes everything. So here's what I want you to do. Before you click off this video, take 5 seconds and think about your most recent interaction with police. What did they ask you? What did you say? And what might you say differently next time? Drop your answer in the comments. I read them. And I want to know if this changed the way you see those blue lights in your rear view. One more thing before we go. If you found this valuable, subscribe. Not because I asked you to, but because what's coming next might save you a lot more than a traffic ticket. We're doing a full breakdown next week on the one phrase you should never, ever say to an officer. And trust me, you've probably said it before. For now, remember this. The most powerful word in any police encounter is not yes. It's not no. It's lawyer. Use it wisely. Stay safe. And never forget that the questions they ask are never just questions. They are tools. And now you know exactly how they work.